guys. Thanks for joining us. We have Team Iowa with us. We were talking with Rachel and Steve earlier, and you guys said you were going to come back and fill us in on what you were doing. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. I know that what you guys are fighting is trafficking in a big way, and a lot of people don't realize that this is such a big deal. They think it's just happening on the border or it's just happening to people they don't know. Rachel, tell us what it is that you're up to.
Well, as you know, you and I met through America's Frontline Doctors, now Freedom Brigades, and so I was part of Team Iowa during most of that time, and so I have rejoined Team Iowa so that we can collaborate and just reach the masses. So we do a lot of things from protecting property rights to anti-human trafficking, to medical freedom, to different things like that. Those are the main things that we're working on. Legislation, working with
Sure.
whoever we
So
can.
the Freedom Brigades work well with Team America and all the different states that they work with, and Jeffrey is a good friend of the Freedom Brigades as well. And
Right.
so we work with you guys on levels on all of those things. I know that we're working on medical freedom quite a bit here in Oklahoma with Team Oklahoma. So
Right.
go ahead. Right.
Right. You know what I love about what I love about Freedom Brigade's motto, join the resistance. I keep hearing over and over, we must resist, we must expose. And that's the main thing that we need to do here, because that's what I'm hearing over and over from different podcasts and different guests and people in the fight. Expose the evil, resist, resist. So anyway, thanks for having us today. And I'll let Steve do a little talking.
Well, I don't know what we talked a couple of weeks ago, I guess, just to give you a little bit of a background. So I'll kind of go back over that a little bit. I'm the founder of Team Iowa. When I was listening to Jeff Prather's podcast over 5 years ago, I guess, trying to figure out how to get involved in this, as I was watching had been watching the storm clouds kind of coming at us for the last 20 years, and probably donned a tinfoil hat all those years. And yeah, I was one of those crazy people, and now so many of the crazy things that I was trying to bring to people's attention have come to fruition. And
Steve, same.
yes,
I am so glad. Like, so the conspiracy theorists were like, hey, we were right. Like,
well, the one thing I could say where you and I differ is you got a lot nicer looking hair after wearing your tinfoil hat than I do, because this is what happened to me. But it was one of those, looking in the mirror one morning, literally looking in the mirror one morning as I was shaving, and like, how do I get involved? How do I get engaged? And it was just one of those spiritual moments, right? Where the answer was, well, maybe you should check this Team America thing out. So I went and pressed the button on his webpage, join Team America. It took me 3 times, but that was in the very early stages of Team America. They're really at that stage, Jeffrey didn't have any real administrative people underneath him and stuff like that. So in the third attempt, I asked, is there anybody else in the state of Iowa that has, applied to be, or, started a team? And I got a spreadsheet with 19 names on it. And so I hadn't heard from anybody. So I just sent out a group email to everybody and I said, here's who I am. And I said, is there a team established? And we need to get together and figure this out. So within the next 48 hours, I started getting emails back in from different people. So I put together, and I believe at that time I used Telegram to put together a little, gathering. And that's how we got started. And believe it or not, I believe we're probably the longest established team in Team America. Team Iowa is now. We're in our 5th year. We've gone through our ups and our downs like any organization does. I've got some people on the team that have been here since day one, believe it or not. And we've got, because of the efforts in human trafficking that Stacy is absolutely spearheading, we've got more and more people now expressing interest in joining Team Iowa because, we have a little one-page or trifold that actually Stacy created. It's a beautiful little piece that kind of gives you a real quick by bullet point outline of who and what we are. We're not a 501c anything. We're not a nonprofit. We're not structured that way at all. And we've got a number of different lanes and inflection points that we work on, and human trafficking is certainly one of them, as well as some of the things that Rachel highlighted for you. And we're now, stretching beyond the state borders of Iowa. We've got we've got somebody in Illinois. We got, a person over in Nebraska. We're collaborating closely with a gal out in California on different things, chemtrailing and geoengineering as an example. We had a bill that was brought forward down in Des Moines just recently. Unfortunately, it didn't pass. They're very much symbolic. They don't have any real legal teeth to them, but it's bringing awareness to the issue. So we're also working on teaching people and citizens here in our state, resiliency, being more self-reliant, being able to take care of themselves in times of disaster, which we've seen and had. So yeah, there's just a lot of different things. So I don't want to take up any more time because we,
So yeah,
yep.
no, I appreciate you guys the efforts and I really have enjoyed the collaboration that the Freedom Brigades has done with Team Iowa, but you guys specifically have been looking at trafficking. And Stacy, I know you're helping with that. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that and how we can help.
Okay. Well, Team Iowa, we just identified this as one of our top priority initiatives. And it was something that I brought to the team that I said we needed to bring some awareness on because we're fighting a lot of battles with all of our teams across this nation. And with Team Iowa, our focus was let's get this out to the masses. And I guess I'm fortunate that God gave me the gift of speaking. Sometimes I think Steve can out talk me, but I've been a speaker for 25 years, out educating. I just had no idea that God was going to have me speaking about this. So once I had that inquiry of like, what is going on with the trafficking, I was very fortunate at that time to get connected with three detectives that we had in our state. And it was, Greg Hall, David Gonzalez, and Ray Fiedler. And once I started learning from them, and they all had presentations that they were doing a little bit throughout the state, then we knew that we could develop a program for ourselves to get out there with Team Iowa. And of course, it's evolved immensely in the last 2 years from the little bit of information that we had 2 years ago to now the vast amount of information. A lot of our information, though, is coming from victims and survivors themselves, but it's also coming from law enforcement. And again, those detectives have helped. But then, yeah, just the number of cases that we've had across the state. So we were able to buy the educational license for Grid Shock, which is a documentary produced right here in Iowa by Vanessa McNeil. So that documentary, people can find it online. It's just Grid Shock. And you can rent it for $10 yourself for a personal viewing. We bought the educational license so we can show it anywhere, across this nation that we want to show it. So we only bought it as a tool. So it's just a tool. The presentation that we put together is a 2-hour presentation. We use the documentary as 55 minutes of that as the tool. And then I kind of put together with all the years of experience of speaking, put together what was the format, what did we want to educate people. And so I go into an hour-long presentation of real cases that are happening in our rural small towns because everybody has this misconception it's only the interstates and truck stops when really we in rural America have very easy hiding spots because we turn the cheek because a lot of us are, we've lost that sense of community. So then we kind of turn the cheek a lot when we don't want to get involved. But also then, what to look for, what are action steps? And then I get down to what are the seeds of all of this? Because if we don't get down to the weeds of this and we don't pull it out by the root, we are never going to eradicate human trafficking. So that's kind of what our presentation is. When we started knowing that we're going to go out to the masses and start doing this would have been in the summer of 23. And we were only doing like 1 or 2 a month. Steve had done some on the west side of the state. And really at that time, it was going to be Steve was going to take over the west side of the state and Stacy had the central and eastern side of the state at that time. But you know what? Things just started evolving and I was getting tons of phone calls. And it wasn't that I was just trying to take it all on, but when you have one person that can wrap their arms around it entirely, it just made it easier. And I really felt God was pulling me to like, this is what I need you to do. And now we're doing anywhere from, well, some days I'm doing 2 or 3 a day, and we're all volunteers. I mean, this is just a volunteer
Yeah.
thing. People don't understand that. They're like, why would you do this? It's a volunteer job. Well, why wouldn't I do this? Because if we're in God's army, Team Iowa, Team America, we're supposed to have our boots on and running. And if we don't have those boots laced up and we're ready to go out and fight this evil that we're fighting, then we're really not doing anything at all then, and we're assigned to do that. So that's
So,
kind of what
one
we've
thing you're
been through.
saying here, because you said it, Steve said it, Rachel said it, those of you listening, everyone knows if you're watching this show, you know that the Republic has fallen. You know that we have to fight back, and you can do it. All of us were everyday people. I was homeschooling my kids. I have a paralegal degree that I started using once they started really attacking us with COVID, and I did it from home. Everyone, but I wanted to just stay home and homeschool my kids and be left alone. All of us are volunteering our time. Nobody is getting rich on this. As a matter of fact, the people I know in this movement that were wealthy are no longer wealthy because it's costing money to do this. But what we're doing is so much bigger than personal gain, and you've got to be a part of it because that's the only way we are going to win is all of us doing our part. We have no choice. If you go to freedombrigades.com, go to Team America, this is how we win is by taking back our communities. And there is something you can do. God put you on this earth for such a time as this. You are here for a reason, and we all have to fight back. I did want to mention one of the things you said was that, you said it was a volunteer position, but you said you've been talking about the root of this and you want to show people what to look for. What can our viewers look for what to see if people are being trafficked? What is the root of this? Which I think the root of this goes back to pornography, right? Which is what I mean, pornography always continues to, you want more, and it's never enough, and it eventually goes to the sickest things you can't come back from. In a criminal justice degree, they will tell you that is the one thing that has never been rehabilitated is a pedophile. That's the point of no return, and you cannot there's not one case of that. And so when you allow yourself to go down that hole and it just sucks from you. Sin takes so much more from you than you were ever willing to give.
And
But
Charity,
okay, please do,
Charity,
Rachel.
can I just say something on that note because that's so important. The first presentation I watched with Stacy was about a month ago, and I think it was the pastor that told me we talked about how the problem is with the men, broken men. It's mostly men, and she told me about a movie called Heart of a Man, which I bought, and I bought it on. It's called Gumroad. It's an app you can buy for some of these movies, grid shots on there too. So I think what I'm going to start working on is just what you're talking about. Chains Interrupted is a local group here that fights human trafficking, and they have a group for men. So if we can really get to the root of that problem and root out that, then there's nobody looking for pornography, then there's nobody selling, and there's nobody being trafficked. So you're so right about that. So I just wanted to tell you that that's another part that we need to work on.
Well, and pornography is here because the breakdown of the family happened, right? The biblical concept of God, husband, wife, and the husband and wife do not come before the kids. The kids come from that. And everything being out of order and saying mom needs to be out of the home and let the government raise your kids. And this whole the societal, very purposeful thing from the enemy that attacked the family unit is where all of these things start, and they create the holes in the soul that our pornography tries to fill and drugs try to fill. And so that it really comes back to our biblical values.
This is a big part of the problem, Charity, right here.
Well,
It's the
because it
it's
makes it accessible. That
exactly this
this
it's
is
the
the tool. It's
technology.
not the problem. It's the tool.
Well, it's just that it's big, yeah, it's absolutely the tool, but it becomes the problem because it's everything is so accessible now
Yeah,
through
it is.
technology, whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a notebook or a laptop or anything like that. Everything is right there at your fingertips. And then, of course, the pedophiles and the traffickers know how to infiltrate, our privacy through the technology that's available today. And that's a big part of the problem. And one other thing I wanted to add, it kind of goes back to just a little earlier conversation, is this. When it comes to getting involved, we're not teaching civics anymore to our kids, okay? And one of the things that you'll learn about being a citizen of a republic, okay, which we are not, as you know, the republic has fallen and it happened a long time ago. And one of our mission in Team America is to restore our republic
Sure.
legally, morally, and ethically. You'll hear that from Jeff Prather all the time, right?
Right.
And I always make sure that I say that as well, because that's exactly what our mission statement is as a whole, as far as Team America. But in order to do that, people have to understand, as citizens of a republic, it is their civic duty to be part of that republic and the government that is part, that we use, to govern and to create some sort of, form. And we don't need to have this gigantic federal bureaucracy that we need. It's ridiculous. And everything, in Team Iowa hears me say this all the time. It always comes down to the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. In other words, the power resides at the lowest level, which is us. And we are not actually, we got to turn that pyramid back upside so that we're looked at as the top, we the people. And those that serve us are at the bottom. Okay. Right now in this democracy, they've got it turned around. They've got everybody looking up to the government to take care of them. And we got to stop that, because the government is also a part of this human trafficking problem in a big way. And Emily would be talking about CPS, Child Protective Services, and others, and Stacy talks about it as well.
So Stacy, tell us about that, Child Protective Services. And also, I know I asked you what people need to look for when they're in public. I don't want to get away from that because that is so important. It is happening right in front of you and you don't always see it.
Right. And, I always tell everybody that there's some physical signs to look for, but also traffickers are very smart, right? So only 8% is abduction anymore, because that was a lot of our perceptions was it was the creepy white van with the rundown drug houses. And when you listen to these victims, most of these victims are sold in multi-million dollar homes because who can afford the ticket? So that's one thing, that we're always kind of aware of that. But the physical signs that we look for, the biggest MO of today is chipping. They microchip their victims. So you and I can't see it. So there are tools out there. A lot of, there's an officer up in Sheldon that showed me there's a wand that most of the time it's veterinarians that actually buy these wands. They're around $500 or so. You can actually scan over, of course, horses, dogs, and cats, but you can also scan over humans to find the microchips. Well, the reason they're doing the microchips is it's tracking and chipping and tracking devices. So I could have my phone, and if I chipped my victim, I can follow them wherever they go. So it's an easy manipulative piece, because I can say, if you run to law enforcement or you run to the hospital, I'll be able to see where you're at, and I will kill your family before you return home. So these are some actual threats that are being given to some of these victims. I know one that was microchipped. So that's one of the big things they're doing today, because that's why they don't have to abduct anymore. Abduction's too risky because we have Amber Alerts and social media and people are looking for them. Well, now they can just chip them. Prior to chipping, Charity, the biggest thing to look for, of course, was tattooing and marking. The biggest tattoo is on the back of the neck. This is the most common, but it's not saying it's the only place, but on the back of the neck. In the movie Sound of Freedom, the little girl had a tattoo on the back of her neck. The most common tattoo is a barcode, and you can look this up online too. If the barcode is done well enough, traffickers can actually scan the barcode to keep track of the production of their victims. The next place we see tattoos is inside the bottom lip. That's why it's really calling dental offices and dental hygienists, because they are going to be the people who see that, not us. Same with the chipping, we don't see it. But I have had 2 dental hygienists who've actually come forth and told me they've had patients in their chair with names tattooed inside the bottom lip. Traffickers know to look there to see if they're already owned. So that's another place. And then, of course, on the chest area is the third most popular. Usually it's a crown followed by a man's name or initials, because they like to be called their king. That's how they're owned. And so that's something to look for. I had a victim that she had a crown tattooed here, and it was one of her friends that recognized that. So those are some tangible, those are things to look for. I've had a victim that was branded with a hot branding iron. So, when even though they're like, well, everybody's tattooed today. How do we know? Well, those are just some of the signs to look for. I don't know too many people that want to have a tattoo inside their bottom lip, but it's hard for us to see, like I said. The thing we also tell people is 2 phones. Most of us can't afford 1 phone, let alone 2. So sometimes traffickers will give their victims a second phone and say that is to be their beck and call. Like, they need to answer it. They will do track my friends on that phone that they have. They don't have to chip them that way. So if you notice somebody's having 2 phones, that might raise a little red flag. Like, why would they have 2 phones? So when we talk about what to look for, Charity, it's kind of hard. Those are some of the things to look for. but of course, you can get into the whole emotional side of things, right? The withdrawn, low self-esteem, easy, vulnerable people. But again, those are hard. How do you distinguish
This
that?
is, I just, it's making me want to cry. I don't know, man. I have little girls, and so it just makes me like, it makes me angry. It makes me want to cry. It makes me want to fight that anyone would torture a human being like that, a child. It's so much worse than, it's so much worse than the rape, the psychological torture. It's criminal is not the word, inhumane is the word. Um,
It's
that
demonic. That's
demonic,
what it is.
that's a better word. Um, wow.
In charity, a lot of people, I mean, definitely we should be aware, even if you have girls, but I've had dads come up at programs at the presentation and say, "Oh, I'm so glad that, I have boys and I don't have girls." And here's the
Yeah.
sad reality. Boys under the age of 10 are the highest paid commodity. They will pay more for a boy than they will a girl. And Laura Logan had that on her show as well, that they were paying more for boys in Texas than they were for girls as well, under the age of 10. And when people like look at me like, why is this, how is this possible? And I really have one sentence. Look at around our world. We live in a very sexually perverted world. They
Yeah.
want little boys. And then they're torturing them. I mean, that's the sick reality. And so when I tell a dad, just because you have a boy and not a girl, you are not out of the woods. In fact, they're after the boys. And the number one place they go after kids, the enemy knew what he was doing with the cell phones. I mean, they're in our
Yeah.
hands, they're easy accessible, just like you said, but they're going after the kids. And I bet if we did a deep dive search on who created some of these gaming apps, it's probably traffickers themselves. And they have these
Absolutely.
apps so that they're lured in so easily. And the two top apps that I talk about, I mean, there's a bunch, but Roblox is number one for going after boys because they know the majority of boys play Roblox. And girls, it's usually Snapchat. But Discord and Omegle, and we have a whole list of apps that they go after. But it really is luring those kids on because it takes one simple person to reach out to them and say that they're 12 years old too, and they want to be friends. Most of these kids have met someone online, but have never met them in person. And I would bet a majority of those people are predators, and these kids are clueless.
It makes me sick. And so, boy, I really need to get RPact. I need to tell them I need affiliate or some kind of paybacks because I use RPact with my kids. I have three boys that are grown now. But RPact is it's a parental control app, so you can, of course, limit their time, limit everything they do, but it also, you can see at any time I could press a button and see what's happening on the screen right then. And it gives me screenshots every 5 minutes, and it is worth the money. And I remember, my youngest son, who actually today's his birthday, he's turning 21 today. But when he was a teenager, he's like, "You're in the middle of my business." And I'm like, "That's absolutely right. I will stay in the middle of your business until further notice when you can pay for your phone and your housing and all of that. Then we'll talk about not being in your business." But there is not an understanding of privacy. It's not like I would not walk in the room without knocking if he's getting dressed. But in your phone, that is not privacy, parents. That's responsible parenting. You need to have parental control apps. You need to be in the middle of all of that. And then it also goes back to the family we were talking about. If I didn't take phones away, like I limit the time, and then like we don't have phones on Saturday at my house, we put them away. And you have to do that. Otherwise, you're also hurting your family time and the bonds because everybody is on their own device. And it's just harmful in so many ways. Parents need to step up and be parents and take control of these devices and understand you're the parent, you are in control, and the fit your kid's going to throw about it is dangerous. It shows how addicted they are to it. That's even more reason to take it away and say, "Hey, well, no, you get a break. You got an hour of phone today. I don't know how you're going to use that, but that's up to you. And after that, your phone's going to turn off." And these are the kind of things that you have to do, because guys, this is they're and it's not just predatoring on the through the games, but there was I don't remember who it was, and I actually tried it. Whenever the camera picked up on the age of the person watching the device, it showed different images and different grooming and different advertisements based on the age of the person watching. Well, that's scary if it's predators that are deciding that. And in some cases it is. And so we need to be very mindful of these things and understand, okay, so we can't change this as society, but we can we've got to take responsibility for our families because the breakdown of the family is really the root cause of all of this. We've
Well,
got, go
thanks
ahead.
for pointing that out, Charity, because that's so important. Strong families is strong communities, and that is why they targeted the breakdown of the family years ago. That was the agenda. Let's roll this out. Let's do, let's liberate women. It's really so backwards. And after all these years, I finally see what should have been, but I've already raised my family, so my hope is that we can help from now on, helping families, strong families, and any way we can support them. I had an incident with my daughter on her phone, and I had talked to one of the cops, and unfortunately, she said to me, she says, most parents don't even check their kids' phones, and that was just devastating. Like, I had checked her phone, and there was something on her phone through Snapchat. And I mean, yeah, these predators will find them anyway. And it was, we need to re-engage and strengthen families, and we need to support families is what we need to
Well, and we
do.
need to empower parents. So you have the public school system and the media telling parents you really are not the authority, we're the authority. And so you get this mindset. In Oklahoma, they just passed this bill that where they took cell phones out of schools, right? And so it's going to the governor's desk because they're saying, well, it's a better learning environment. I'm like, that is a pedophile's playground. How about the parents be responsible and have parental control apps and not have the state overstep their place and say a kid can't have a cell phone? I would want my kids to be able to document things and be able to call me. My oldest, I homeschooled till fifth grade, and she is in public schools now, and I want her to be able to contact me anytime. And her phone doesn't do anything except call during school hours. She can't access the internet because I'm a responsible parent. The same kind of thinking that allowed that, which is a pedophile's dream come true, is the same kind of thinking that takes away guns because not everybody's responsible. I'm sorry, not every parent is responsible, but I am, and I don't appreciate you taking that right from me to have that, my daughter to be able to contact me.
Well,
And
and
so,
unfortunately, Charity, they have these apps in the Chromebooks, and Stacy can talk about that, how they can access children through the Chromebooks that they use
exactly.
at the school. So why take the phones away?
Ultimate authority. The school is the ultimate authority, and it's not the parents. And we need to change that mindset because the parents are now relinquishing their authority and they're not taking their place to protect their kids. I want to welcome Michelle Peterson to this conversation as well. Hi, Michelle. Oh, she's going to connect to audio. So, what are you seeing about this, Stacy? Are you seeing this as a big problem as well? I'd like to hear your input on this with the
Yeah,
cell
I would
phones.
definitely say with the cases that we're hearing, yeah, cell phones and the Chromebooks at school, they're playing on the apps. But I will tell you that all the presentations that I have done, especially in the schools, I've had kids come up to me afterwards every single time telling me their story of how they were lured in through their phones or really, and the boys are addicted to pornography. A lot of them are addicted to pornography because in 2 clicks they have free Pornhub on their phones. I mean, I just had a girl last night. I'm just going to tell you this quick story. Eighth grade, she said when she was in eighth grade, her boyfriend was addicted to pornography on his phone. He told her that unless she had sex with him, like the videos in the porn, he was going to break up with her. So in eighth grade, she had sex with him to perform like what these videos were that he was watching. She fell out of fear. That was a
That's
girl just last night.
Guys, I'm telling you, in eighth grade, call me naive, but it's because our society has not valued innocence at all. In eighth grade, I did not even know about some of the things that adults do, and I shouldn't have. Eighth graders should not know about oral sex, about a lot of the things, I don't want to even go into all the details, they should not even know. And this
I didn't
is
know either, Charity.
we should be protecting innocence in our children. And I do, my younger girls are that we homeschool them and they're very protected, and people are like, you shelter them. And I'm like, absolutely, I shelter them. And when they are mature enough to handle the sickness of the world, they will have a strong foundation to be able to handle it because I didn't take their innocence from them. We have a whole generation of kids that their innocence is being stolen from them, and what's this going to do? That when a child is molested, when they have their innocence taken from them, they deal with it their entire life, and now we're going to have generations of kids that is not, their innocence wasn't something that was valued. And it's only going to get worse if we don't have God step in, the Christians step in and say, here's the line. The patriots I see across the board actually stepping in and saying, we're drawing the line, are Christians, because the church hasn't. The church has compromised. And I didn't mean to go here. I always do. It seems that way. But we have to step up and say, here's the line. If we don't stand up for righteousness, it has already gone way too far off the rails. We've got to pull it back in. I do want to hear from Michelle. Steve, you've got your hand up. What's up?
The comment I have is this part, the family unit that you were talking about just a little bit ago. One of the things that has been a frustration for me is, where's the man in the family today? What has happened to the American male? I feel like men in this country have been neutered. Jeff Prather talks about this, and I could not agree more. He talks about it in Christ Chaplaincy and whatnot, and that is this. The man's responsibility, number one responsibility, is to the children, and number two is to the women. So, Team Iowa has been made up primarily, so almost since the beginning, the core of the team are mama bears, are women warriors. It's been very frustrating for me that we don't have a better mix of men in Team Iowa, although that is changing as we speak. Where are the men? That's my question. And especially in this conversation, where are the men? Where are the fathers?
Well, we spent generations making fun of them on TV, having women be dominant. And I can tell you, most women, like when I was in high school, there was that song, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? You remember that? As we were saying, where are the real men? We like toxic masculinity. I'm just telling you, we don't think it's toxic. That's why everyone likes that guy on Yellowstone. It's not that he's good looking, it's that he's a manly man, and that's what women want. And a lot of women are walking around resentful of the fact that they have to step in the place of a man because we have demasculated so many of them. And so Michelle, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to ignore you. Welcome to the conversations. It's good to see you.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi,
So,
everyone.
what is it that you're working with Team Iowa as well?
Yes, so I'm across the border actually in Illinois.
Awesome.
But I was introduced to them through Emily Peterson, and we were working on a grooming law in Iowa. And so I got involved with Team Iowa through that and kind of telling our story, trying to get the information out there about unlawful grooming, and that's how all of this starts,
What is
right?
your
So,
story? Go ahead.
pardon me?
What is your story? You said tell your story.
So, yep. So my son, back in 2010 was 15 at the time, was being groomed by a male teacher at Morris High School here in Illinois, which is about 80 miles southwest of Chicago, small farming community. And in a text message, he put straight out there that he offered him money from $500 up to $1,500 for oral sex, wanted to make a sex video with him, and then would also refer to his body part as my little guy, would ask him when he's ever going to get to see the little guy. So this was all in text message. And because I was one of those moms that checked my son's phone, I never saw one of over 6,000 messages because when they would come in, he would delete them. And I overheard a conversation, and then that led me to believe that this was a teacher, where he said that, my son sounded very annoyed. It was late at night on a Sunday in October. And he said, I don't know how often you want me to call you, that I'm busy and working two jobs and taking a class in college. And he was a junior in high school at the time. And then I heard him say, I'll just meet you in your classroom tomorrow to pick up those paintballs. And so I knocked on the door, asked him who he was talking to, and he told me. And I said, you need to hang up the phone. It's completely inappropriate that he's calling you at 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't even baseball season. It was October because he was a baseball coach at the high school. Um, And that led to a 3-year ordeal to get this guy convicted. And my biggest issue and problem that I had at the time was really the state's attorney's office in our county. They essentially wanted me to go away. I had to keep coming back. And then we ended up getting a conviction of unlawful grooming and solicitation of a minor. And it turned out to be the very first grooming conviction in the United States. And it was the only grooming conviction for 10 years. So in 2023, I met a trafficking investigator named Amy Coelho out of Texas, and she was telling me about some cases she was working on. One of them most recently was the Veluso Mundo case out of California. It's a church cult, and it's where the women in the church prepared the kids in the church for the men in the church. And it took her 10 years to get this guy busted, essentially. And they couldn't even bust him for trafficking because of the plea deals that were taken. And he ended up getting ultimately 18 years in prison. And to back up a little bit, the guy that did this to my son got 30 days in jail. Had
What?
to, yes, 30 days. Had to register as a sex offender for 10 years only. So as of last May, he's no longer in the sex offender registry. Paid a $2,700 fine, but he can no longer teach. And that was my ultimate goal. And what we're trying to do now is change the law here in Illinois. But when I met Amy, she was telling me about this case, and then she told me about another couple of cases, and one of them was a Larry Nasser gymnast out of Michigan State, was one of their clients. And Amy's a trafficking investigator with 30 plus years of experience, and then also a paralegal. So I started telling her about my case, and she said, "Hold on, are you from Illinois?" And I said, "Yes." She goes, "When was it?" I said, 2013. He was sentenced in 2014. And she grabbed my arm and got tears in her eyes. She goes, "I cannot believe I'm meeting you." She said, "We use your case for every trafficking case that we bust." And wanted to get a picture with me and send it to her team. We were both in tears and didn't realize that at the time, I knew it was the very first conviction for grooming, thinking it would be used for other grooming cases, but never once ever thought trafficking. That never crossed my mind. And she then told me after I told her the whole sordid detail, and it's a very long story, but I kept getting doors shut and kept coming back and trying to find ways. I had to actually find somebody to get the messages off my son's phone. And it took them nearly a year to get the messages off the phone, and not until I actually threatened them with having a Secret Service agent take over the case and get the messages off the phone did they then get them back to me 3 days later after telling them I was going to turn it over to the feds. So she said that they were kind of cheering me on from afar and, telling me, don't give up, keep going, mama. And they were praying for me to keep going because they needed that grooming conviction to help their trafficking cases. So she told me that they have to prove the grooming in order to prove the trafficking in many cases, and there was no conviction yet. So upon hearing that, we thought that the reason that I had the only grooming conviction is because people were taking a plea deal. So we started putting it into motion that we would amend the current grooming laws so that somebody who was charged with grooming couldn't take a plea bargain. Started working with General Flynn, his sister Mary Flynn O'Neill, with America's Future, got hooked up with a paralegal out of Florida. She started looking at the criminal code in Florida and realized very quickly that they didn't even have a grooming law to amend. So then we started backpedaling and then looking at other states, and we found out that Illinois was the only state that had a grooming law in place. So nothing happened to any of these folks until they actually defiled a child and touched them. And at that point, it's really somewhat, irreparable damage, right? So she then started working with a senator and a representative out of Florida, got a grooming law put in place in Florida, then worked with Mark Thompson out of Iowa, who's a representative, and he took that on, and now there's a grooming law in Iowa. Arizona then had an issue. They got a hold of Florida and Florida and Iowa, and took the Illinois law, and they now have a grooming law in place as well. And there's a grooming law in place in Georgia as of last year as well, and that was done by another mom named Susan Cobb, whose daughter was molested and groomed by a YMCA gymnastics coach there. And she'd been trying for 3 years to get a grooming law in place. But once these other laws fell in Florida and Iowa, it became much easier for her to get it passed in Georgia. So that's what I'm doing now, is trying to get a grooming law put in place in all 50 states, as well as amending our current grooming law, which would be known as Andrew's Law after my son. And it would make it so that anybody charged with grooming and or trafficking in Illinois could not take a plea deal. It will also expand the sex offender registry to include places of businesses that are privately owned and trying to make it so it's a lifelong registry, not just 10 years. So places that are privately owned, such as Chuck E. Cheese, Dave and Buster's, private play areas in the mall, those places are not included in the sex offender registry, and they're literal playgrounds for these guys. So, and women. So that needs to get included on the sex offender registry.
Wow. Like you just
So,
said so many things that just
yeah,
blew my mind. Like, first of all, kudos to you because, I mean, Illinois rivals California for being the most communist place in the states.
right.
And you were able to lead the charge on this. So that kudos in that. That's
Yeah, so
amazing.
the grooming law is already in place as of July of 2013. We went to court in August of 2013, and by the grace of God, this guy decided he wasn't going to take a plea deal and wanted to take it to trial because we were set for him to take a plea deal in August of 2013. Wants to take it to trial, really ticked off the judge that was on the case, and he laid into him. And any of you have ever been in court, like you can't show really any emotion, even sitting there. Like I wanted to scream hallelujah. Like finally somebody is laying into him and his attorney. They were trying to blame me that I was just this vindictive mom going after this coach, right? And
Why wouldn't you be a vindictive mom going after the coach? Why is that something that would be looked down on? Like
right,
they should be grateful you didn't go over and choke him. Well, I'm serious. Like
seriously. I
I
mean,
don't understand why that's something you look. Of course,
right.
I,
I mean,
that's
I always
nothing.
say that this guy's lucky I have a good head on my shoulders because I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now in front of you. I'd be in
All of
prison.
us are lucky you do because of your good head and your cool head, you've been able to make a difference across
Yeah,
the country. Have
by
you
the
gotten
grace of
this in front
God.
of Trump's administration? Are you talking to the White House?
So I need an in there. I actually had a message yesterday, finally, from my congressman, and I had reached out to them several times. So I'm hoping that I can work with them. But there is a federal grooming law in place, but we want to amend it and make it Andrew's law, so they also cannot take a plea bargain. So the federal grooming law is if you actually cross state lines. So if it happens within each state, because each state is sovereign, they have to have their own grooming law. But the federal grooming law crosses state lines. So if you have somebody, let's say in California, grooming somebody in Montana, now you can use the federal grooming law. But if it's somebody in Montana grooming somebody in Montana, there is no law in Montana. So and the reason I chose Montana is because I have a cousin who lives there. She heard me on a podcast and she bought her daughter a Bark phone after I suggested this on a podcast, a Bark app or the Bark phone, which actually allows messages going in and out of your child's phone to come onto your phone. And if you have the actual phone, there's a GPS on there that cannot be disabled. So if somebody should take that phone from that child, they can't disable that unless they actually turn the phone off or smash the phone and get rid of it. Um, so it's always on and cannot be turned off by the child. But because she did that, she bought her daughter a Bark phone who was 13, and she started getting messages that somebody was messaging her daughter through Snap. So on the Snapchat app, and she thought it was a 14-year-old boy, the daughter did. And my cousin was like, "This is not a 14-year-old boy." So I told her, I said, "Take that to your local police department." She did, and they essentially told her she just needed to be a better parent. She then took it to, I told her to take it to the sheriff. Same thing happened there. I said, take it to your local FBI. So the guy at the local FBI, he had been trained by ICAC, which is the Internet Crimes Against Children. And he said, yep, we're going to look into this. And I said, it was right at the end of the school year. So I told her, I said, go to your school, get her Chromebook before they wipe it for the next year. Because I'm sure that he probably was trying to get a hold of her on her Chromebook. And that's exactly what happened. They found messages on her Chromebook as well at school. And because of that, my cousin was able to talk to them about getting Bark put on all of their technology at the school. So now Bark is on all their laptops, all their computers, all their devices. And that's as of just this year. And they found out that she was actually being messaged by two men in a different state. It was a dad and his son. And so they're working that. And then I asked her, I said, can you now reach out to a local rep or a senator and see if they will sponsor a grooming bill in Montana? So it turns out that her boyfriend, his cousin, is a Democrat rep in Montana, and she ran with it. She unfortunately wasn't on the committee that needed to handle that bill, gave it over across the aisle to a Republican representative, and they have one of the toughest grooming bills out there right now. So part of that grooming bill is, and it's House Bill 82, I believe, but part of it is that if somebody is actually groomed if somebody over the 18 or over is grooming a child 12 years of age and under, that it'll be 100 years in prison, no chance of parole for the first 25. And if they get out after that first 25, it's a lifelong satellite surveillance. So this is what we need across the entire country. That should be
Yes, it
model
is.
legislation for every state. And it's
So
so far it's passed the House and the Senate unanimously. So I think that's actually going to become law.
So let's work together on that. So between Team America, Freedom Brigades, let's get that to the states and in the hands of the people and get it to our legislators. I
Right.
do want to talk to you about some of this other stuff offline, so stay on afterwards. Guys, we are almost out of time, but Stacy, I want you to give us your final words on this. Before I do that, though, I did want to ask Michelle one thing. Michelle, would you say if you have a child, the best thing you can be doing is paying attention to that phone. Put on a parental control app, watch what's happening on the phone.
Yes, and don't, here's the biggest thing is you need to not be your child's friend
That's
and
right.
be in their business all the time. Like I was looking
Yes.
at his phone all the time. I would look at his apps, his emails. I never saw one message. If I would have had a Bark app or if I would have taken his phone at night, I would have seen these messages coming in. Your kids don't need their phone after 9 o'clock at night.
That's
Take
right.
their phone from them. Leave it on by your bedside, and you can see messages coming in. Then I would have seen these messages. I think
Yes.
that's the thing that it just infuriates me for myself that I wasn't more diligent and that I thought I was doing enough and it wasn't enough. And that's your phone. You're paying the bill.
That's right.
So you have every right to take that phone. Also, if people want to find out more information, I do have a website. It's Michelle
Absolutely.
Peterson. So it's just my name, michellepeterson.org. And I have tabs at the top that have all of the laws and the bills that are already enacted. We have a skeleton bill on there that people can go in and grab. One of the things that I keep hearing from attorneys is that it's unlawful to not offer a plea deal, right? But I feel that plea deals are actually unlawful. So nowhere in the Constitution does it state that you're allowed to take a plea deal. And if we need to change the verbiage in that, if any attorneys want to help with that, we are more than happy to work with people. And anybody who has a personal connection with a rep or a senator, if they could reach out to them, text them, give them my website. There's a contact me on there, it goes right to my email, and I'm more than happy to take calls or anything from anybody to try to get this to go forward in every
Thank you,
state.
Michelle.
Michelle,
Thank you for all you
do you
do.
want to plug your event this weekend with General Flynn?
Oh, sure. So
Really quick.
I am working with America's Future, and there's an event this weekend, and it's in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Let me look at the church. It's Oasis Church, 3445 Gateway Drive in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. It's only $35. Friday night, April 25th, 6 to 9:30, and then all day, April 26th, 9 to 5. And there's breakout sessions. General Flynn will be there. Lara Logan will be there. Liz Crokin, Mike Smith from Out of Shadows, Terry Lee Rodas, Lynn
Basil
Smith
Bass.
Loomis, Jared Sadowski. It's a great lineup. And you will become armed with how to recognize trafficking that might be going on in your area and learn more about ARC training, which is the Association for Recovery of Children. So, if anybody needs any information on that too, they can go to the America's Future website, which is americasfuture.net, and get more information and register online.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Rachel. Stacy, final last words.
Okay, last words are the only way to eradicate human trafficking is to be aware. And so our goal as Team Iowa is to bring tons of awareness. Our goal is to bring a tidal wave over this state. Hopefully it'll spill over into all the other states around because we know this is happening everywhere. So if people can just get themselves educated, quit thinking it's only truck stops and interstates because that's a small, small part. This is happening in our backyards. The best thing they can do is look to go to a presentation. Quit watching the MSM when it comes to the human trafficking because they don't want to expose these rats because a lot of the people involved are probably people sitting in front of the camera and also sitting behind desk in power. So that's my last words is just to keep doing what they're doing. I so appreciate my team. They're so supportive. And we appreciate people like you, Charity, getting the real word out there and the truth. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Hopefully we win this together because that's the only way we're going to. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.